did not think about you. I did not care about you. You're not important to me. And that's where we're at today.
Yes.
How does that make you feel, Deej?
I feel nothing.
Hello, my friends.
Thank you for joining us for the PEBCAK Podcast, a weekly information security show featuring some all-around good people. It is week 30 of 2024. I'm Chris Louie, and back with a tan from sunny San Diego. With me, I have my co-host, the Cloud God, who already needs some Rogaine and a spray tan.
Okay.
You're right, I do. Good to be back, guys.
No quippy comment or comeback on that one, Brian.
I know.
Not today.
He insulted us plenty before we started recording, so I think he already got it out of his system.
I can't do Rogaine because I've zapped the hair off my head with a laser. So it's a great call out, Chris. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
But you do have that one that's just sticking up out of nowhere that you missed.
The Charlie Brown hair.
He curls that.
It's used for my
Is that the comb over?
my
that he
Clark
does
Kent.
that?
I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah. And we have Glenn Medina, or should we call him Companion Pass Glenn, or CPG. Glad you could fit us in between your travels with your wife.
Isn't it nice that you can get, you can make a tier in travel, and you can bring your wife along for basically $6 for each leg. It's not bad. I got to give it to Southwest, give them props on how easy it is to be able to travel and add a person for not much.
Our guest this week is Rick Grimes. Ben Coral. Ben just got back from seeing the new Twisters movie, so he will have a unique perspective on both cybersecurity and anomalous weather patterns. Welcome back, Glenn.
Happy
Glenn,
to be here.
it's Ben.
All good.
Glenn, it's Ben.
Welcome back, Ben. I'll play
There
the
you
tape and I'll make sure you didn't correct me incorrectly.
Oh,
Welcome back,
wow.
Ben.
That's how this
All right.
is going to start today.
Welcome, Ben. Or Rick.
Call me whatever you want.
Combined, we have decades of information security experience in here, not just to educate, but to entertain. We've got at least 2 awesome stories for this week, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This week, we're going to talk about an update to a story we covered last week, the recent CrowdStrike debacle, and if we have time, we'll talk about what Fin7 and Southwest are up to. For our first topic, since our last episode, as predicted, more news about how the FBI broke into the phone of President Trump's would-be assassin. Last week when we reported, we said we had no idea what kind of phone it was, but through recent reporting, we found out the phone owned by the shooter was a late model Samsung Android phone, according to 9to5Mac. Last week, when I gave the FBI credit that they can break into these things in-house now, looks like they might have overstated their abilities. It turns out the FBI owns a subscription to the Cellebrite device. The company most famously was thought to be the one that unlocked the iPhone belonging to one of the terrorists of the 2015 terrorist attack in San Bernardino, but it actually turned out to be a different company. The device the FBI owned could not unlock the late model Samsung phone, so they contacted the company, Cellebrite, and obviously they wanted to help out, so they sent the FBI some experimental software which eventually allowed them to break into Thomas Crook's phone and learn absolutely nothing new. At least that is what they are telling us.
So you're saying you don't believe them? That they're not being forthcoming? That they're not being honest? Really?
A U.S. intelligence agency not being honest with the public? That would be a first, wouldn't it?
It's for the better of the people, from a social aspect, right? We can't handle the truth. That's why we have that.
Protecting us from ourselves. Fair enough. Got it.
That's right.
Well, at least we know now it wasn't an iPhone. The would-be assassin was an Android user. And that's how they probably broke into the phone so fast, since it was Android.
You think they needed this? So what you're saying is they needed the Cellebrite service in order to break into it? Or a Cellebrite device?
Yeah, it's a hardware device. They plug the phone in, and then that hardware runs special software, and that software has all the exploits, all the 0 days, all the unlocking methods to
And
it.
since it was a late model phone, it probably wasn't updated. Didn't have all the lock features turned on that you would normally think on a more modern phone.
Pretty much, yeah. They basically had to like jailbreak the Cellebrite device to run experimental software, and they said, well, we've got these 0 days that might work. They're not GA yet, but why don't you give it a try?
Well, what do you think they were planning to get from that? Just like maybe accomplices, maybe some history? I mean, they already knew history of the person already, right? I mean, had the family and everything else.
Probably like a manifesto, or I think they're more interested in text messages. Like, was he plotting? Was this really a lone gunman type attack, or was it a larger conspiracy?
You're saying maybe he was weaponized by some organization?
That's really where I was
Radicalized, if
going.
you would.
Yeah, not just the accomplices, but was he just the weapon? Was he just the trigger man? Pun intended. Or was there a bigger deal going on? Is there more to Paul Harvey? The rest of the story. That's really where I thought that there might be a reason for it.
Maybe they can go check Hillary Clinton's email servers, and they'll find a link inside there.
Yeah, 30,000 missing emails now.
30,001.
And one, yeah. I wonder if they found like Signal on there and they had like disappearing messages. Like, who are these contacts that he's contacting through Signal? There's no chat history here. I don't know if this guy was that good on OPSEC or not.
Yeah, still no history on on his motives or anything like that, right? I mean, it's just all conspiracy right now.
Yeah, I would say not according to the official report. There's really nothing that they learned from this or any kind of motive. I think the most recent headline I saw was that the would-be shooter Crooks was Google searching like what distance did Oswald kill JFK. He was looking things up like that. So it seems like he definitely intended to do this, but it didn't. There's no real motive or any accomplices that they found yet.
So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I get that you're looking at some of those older things, with the previous, but that was a long time ago. Technology has changed. Technology, not just for digital, but even for the weapons and things like that as well. So why would you even bother with some of those types of searches? There's seemingly little to gain, to learn, to do with those as well. But I guess you're sitting here and say maybe there's not a lot of rational thinking that was going on, and things weren't always, I guess, logical.
Logical. No, rational maybe. I mean, he brought a rangefinder there like an hour before. Like he had like a rangefinder in his eye. Like, what legitimate use could you have for a rangefinder and figuring out where the president's gonna stand? Like that should have thrown up so many red flags. And I'm sure this will come out in the congressional testimony and everything. And then I think someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I also saw a news report that this guy flew a drone over the area like an hour before to like get the lay of the land using a drone, and that didn't set off any red flags apparently either.
That's the thing is, that's where you have these things, and I know that there's a joint of what is it that the federal law enforcement has versus the local law enforcement, but hours before an event, how are you able to fly something in the air above that event? That's the thing that really gets me.
Yeah, I think it's breakdown of security controls, and ultimately it led to one person, right, who's the director of the CIA, who has yet to step down.
She did. Director of the Secret Service stepped down.
Secret Service, yeah.
Yeah.
She did?
Yeah.
She finally stepped down. Oh, thank goodness. Yeah. So, yeah, she was under tremendous pressure from Congress and
both sides. Yeah.
Both sides.
Everyone was pretty upset about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Understandably.
But that's just a lapse in judgment. Do you think that was politically motivated? I mean, the fact that he did not have his full entourage and proper protection? That could be another conspiracy theory, right?
Well,
I mean, we just keep going on and we could just spin ourselves.
Well, but that's the thing. It's all risk. And, you can Monday morning quarterback everything. I've done enough incident response that I've been questioned so many different times. Ooh, look at that guy coming back. Good timing. But talk about Monday morning quarterbacks, and Deesh comes back in here. But, everything comes down to risk assessments. And, was there a credible threat? And, was there enough to justify increased protection and additional agents being allocated? And I don't have access to the information, but I could also sit here and say, I'm sure that there's never enough people, there's never enough budget, there's never enough to go around. So just because somebody asked for it, if you can't show that credible threat, I'm sure that it's very hard to justify allocating additional resources, especially 24/7.
It's just like cybersecurity. I watched an interview with a Secret Service guy, and this is way before all this happened. And how he talks about Secret Service protection is just exactly like how we talk about security. He says there's layers. There's layers of security. There's a layer of security next to the president. There's layers of security outside. It works in rings, and you have all these things that have to work together. But the only way you get something to go wrong is that all these rings of protection fail at the same time, and that seems to be what happened here. The other interesting thing to note is that according to leaked internal documents from Cellebrite, if the assassin had been using a late model iPhone or an iPhone running the latest version of iOS, Cellebrite would not have the technical capability to break into the phone without the passcode. If you are running at least iOS 17.4, there's no open Sesame from Cellebrite or the FBI. As a note, iOS 17.5.1 is the latest version, so the majority of users should already be on a non-vulnerable version. And a note for our good friend Victor, most Android phones are vulnerable to Cellebrite devices. The only exceptions are late model Google Pixel phones when they're fully powered off because of the additional cold boot protections. When the phone is simply locked, all bets are off.
So when it's on but locked, all bets are off. That's wild.
Yeah, for most Android phones. And it's interesting.
Repeat that again. If it's on but locked, all bets are off. You can get access into the device.
Yeah, the FBI can break into almost any Android device. Yeah, but if it's powered off, like if you pull out the battery or you shut it down completely, there's certain cold boot features that protect against these vulnerabilities.
See, that's why last time I was hanging out with Victor, his backpack that he carries around, the outside zipper has a Faraday.
Faraday cage on it. A blanket.
VDL? You're talking about the VDL?
Absolutely. I'm sure he does.
That guy.
Our favorite Canadian?
Yeah, favorite Canadian. Yeah, that's his layer of security. Just no signals in or out. Forget somebody punching him and stealing his phone.
And then holding it in front of his face so it unlocks?
Yeah. Yeah, or the old rubber hose trick. Just beat somebody with a rubber hose until they cough up the passcode.
Pinky toes, man. Just got to smash that pinky toe. and they're going to tell you what that code is.
Yeah. I don't carry enough secrets to care enough and worry that my pinky toe is going to get smashed. I'm like, you can have it all. You want my passwords, you can have it.
You want the Island browser source code? Open Sesame.
Here you go. Yeah. I'll even tell you what my old passwords were at Zscaler. So, yeah.
But that's also the other thing of all this data, all these things that are out there, all your passwords have to be, 8 to 12 to 15, characters, uppercase, lowercase, special characters, numeric, and all of this. But to get access to your bank account with your ATM card, to get access to your phone, 4 digits, four numeric digits, and you get access to everything.
Yeah, I wonder if you can ask a bank to increase the length of your PIN. Like you put in your card instead of a 4-digit, you could ask for a 6-digit PIN.
You can do 8.
You could do that, or if that'd be. Can you do 8?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Brian does 7. 8675309.
Timmy Two-Tone. Tommy Two-Tone.
Or he can go based off of his favorite show and just go 90210.
I thought you were about to say 24. That'd be a pretty short passcode. All right, for our second topic, I had multiple people ask me to cover this story of the podcast, and I'm guessing this will take up the majority of the rest of the podcast. Basically, more than any other story that has ever been requested, so I feel I owe it to our listeners to talk about it. I like to say whenever I go on vacation, the world burns down, and this is actually no exception. I woke up in sunny San Diego to a flurry of text messages from coworkers and ex-colleagues with CrowdStrike memes, which meant something really bad went down. In case you were hiding under a rock for the last week, cybersecurity vendor CrowdStrike pushed out an update to their Falcon sensor to detect a kernel-level command and control channel and accidentally sent every Windows endpoint protected by their EDR into a blue screen of death. Now, technically it was a recovery screen, but it was still blue. The machine was completely unusable until somebody physically went to the machine, booted it up in safe mode, and deleted the problematic file. Now, there were some cases where they said if you reboot it 3 times, it would fix itself, and there's some that says if you reboot it 10 times, it would fix itself, and there are some where if you boot it quickly enough before it blue screen, it would get a network connection and download the good file. Those people were saved, but companies like Delta Airlines, they were completely knocked offline. Even for a week, they're still handling canceled flights. I even got a message from Amazon. I had ordered a bunch of stuff on Prime Day, and I got a message from Amazon saying, your delay might be delivery due to a third-party outage. I'm like, I wonder who that could be.
So I got to ask, you guys are in the industry. How many times have you guys been asked, what's your recovery plans should anything like this happen to you guys? And I'm sure we've all gone through this, right, as of late.
For some reason, yeah, it went up 5,000% this week. I'm not too sure why.
Not only do you have a recovery plan, have you tested it? That's really the key there. It's just like backups. Yeah, I have backups. When's the last time you tested them? Oops.
I just feel terrible for the 7 engineers that had to restore like 30,000 servers and get them back up and running at one customer. I was like, damn, man, that's gonna be a long weekend.
And it's all one at a time, right? I mean, it sounded like it was just all one at a time. There was
no automated way to do it. There's no remote way to do it. It was one at a time, physically going in front of that box.
Well, if it was virtualized, you just blow it out and just reimage.
Yeah, recover from a snapshot.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did that.
Yeah. And if you're able to try that 3, 7, or 10 reboots, some that were trying to use the out of band in order to do the reboots to see if that would work. I've heard of some companies who are trying that, which of course found that to be, largely ineffective according to the ones I've chatted about it.
So if I remember, when I was in operations, this was quite a while ago, there was also an order that you had to bring systems back up, right, in order to get communications and whatnot working. I'm sure that had a lot to do with their DR plans as well, as far as, okay, let's break out the DR plan. Which services do we bring back up first, and which ones were affected, and which ones are we going to have to reboot again after we get things back up and running again?
It's always production systems. Production systems first. If Chase.com goes down, that's millions of dollars per second that they're down. Or if they, people, this actually affected the stock markets. There are people that couldn't trade stocks and equities during this time, and that's lost money right there. I heard Delta Airlines alone, just one company, that their tally so far just on canceled flights is $500 million. Just one company. Just think about the 8.5 million endpoints that were affected. Dick's Sporting Goods. There's pictures of Dick's Sporting Goods. A big sign on the door. Our store's closed due to a IT outage. That's lost revenue for them.
Absolutely. And to sit here and all businesses, and I know the word all is a little strong, but businesses truly are digital businesses. And I believe that this is, case in point. This is evidence. The amount of businesses that don't sell services, they don't sell digital goods, they sell widgets. Dick's Sporting Goods is a great example here. This really shows us that businesses truly are digital enterprises. Otherwise, they would not have been nearly as impacted as they were last week and this week as well. Airlines, the planes, they don't need the internet in order to fly, but so many processes focused on the digital assets that they were crippled. So again, most businesses, or all businesses, really are digital in this day and age.
I just remember interviewing at places prior to coming to Zscaler, and I think it was like Illumio and Guardicore, them talking to me about how awesome their endpoint thing was because it hooks into the kernel. And I was just like, man, this is going to be an awkward time for them as well, because they didn't have an outage, but their stuff, like that was like one, like, I think it was on the second slide, right? It's like we talked about our agent, how it hooks into the kernel. Like, that's not a good one. And I think, I don't know if Tetration did that as well. And then I think, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, anyways, that it's got to be a rough kind of quarter coming up for a lot of these companies. And I did see a lot of knee-jerk reactions from customers where there's like, we're done. Like we're never going back to CrowdStrike. Unfortunately, I think that's kind of a dumb move. And the flip side of the coin was, well, what else could we be doing with you to make us more secure? And I'm like, like I get it. Like
we're having, but lots of resiliency audits going on right now.
One of the
no.
I was going to say, like, Zscaler does have an endpoint solution, but it does not hook into the kernel whatsoever. So, from my perception, this wouldn't be a thing that would happen. But I do remember when I first came aboard Zscaler, I was like, I think it was 2 weeks in the job, and I was really concerned about this because when I worked at U.S. Airways, endpoint thing for servers took out USAirways.com. It was ConfigureSoft, which I think eventually was bought by EMC, and then it was actually taken out to the pasture not too long after that, because it wiped out our entire server farm on a Labor Day weekend. And so I was on call. I was the guy that my entire weekend, it was only 30 servers, but it took forever to get that thing. So when I left, or when I had that experience, it was very knee jerk. The guy that was in charge was like, pull it off. We're never using it again. And then I was bitter, tiny and bitter, like the British. And I thought, when I came to Zscaler, I was like, man, if this endpoint agent sucks, I'm going to quit and go work for Palo Alto. And I started, one of the first things I did is when we had a different, I won't mention it by name. We had a different support portal than what we use today. And I was like, I was searching left, right, up and down. Blue screen of death, high CPU, battery drain, and I really couldn't find anything. And so the second weekend, I went to an SE Summit, and I ran into this guy by the name of David Creedy, and I found out he was the PM for Zscaler Client Connector, and I went up to him. I was like, hey man, I know your dirty little secret. You're going in the support thing and you're deleting these things, right? You're deleting evidence that this thing sucks. He's like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? I was like, and then he sat me down. He's really polite, and he's like, you do understand that all the crap that we do that can cause a blue screen of death doesn't actually occur on the endpoint. It's done in the cloud. I was like, oh, he goes, it's just a lightweight steering mechanism. I was like, oh, okay. Now this is starting to make more sense why this thing doesn't suck. So anyways, there's my long story short on this particular topic.
I don't know if you guys remember. Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2010, McAfee had this same issue. Mm-hmm. It was called the McAfee DAT file 5958. For those of you guys that
remember. Look at you, dude.
Did exactly the same thing. Basically, there was a file update that happened, and it pretty much took out everything that happened at that time.
That was like burned in his memory. He had to live through that recovery, so he's always cursing that.
Well,
that four number file name.
I was getting ready to leave my previous employer several employments ago, and it took them out. But what's interesting though, and I'll just put this as a fun fact. Like I said, nothing against this person. Is the CTO of McAfee at that time? Guess was who?
The co-founder and CEO of CrowdStrike.
No way.
There you go.
No way.
I'll leave it at that.
Conspiracy theories abound.
His name's Greg, right?
George.
Leave George alone. Poor guy. I need to be roasting him on the PEBCAK podcast. For crying out loud.
All right.
He's having a hard enough time as is. We'll leave him alone.
Yeah, the one word you cannot use to describe him, Brian, is poor. There's nothing about him that is poor.
I will say, like, I didn't follow everything that he was posting on LinkedIn, but it was pretty transparent. I mean, he bent the knee, went down, owned it, and tried to figure out how to move forward. So I'll give him a lot of credit for that.
And the rub of it is exactly what Brian mentioned, is the kernel level access. That's why Macs weren't affected, and that's why Linux was not affected, because Mac kicked everything out of the kernel, like the 2 major releases ago. We were okay because we didn't operate in the kernel, but I know other major vendors out there had a really hard time. I know the AnyConnect client had to move out, the Guardian Edge client had to move out, and it was causing all kinds of issues. But Mac did the right thing, kicked everybody out of the kernel, but there's always a trade-off, and that's the thing. There's a trade-off between security and visibility. It's the whole iOS model. iOS is considered by most extremely secure, but it's also very black boxy, that you can't see into it. You don't know what's going on, but it's a trust, us as Apple, like, trust us. We know what we're doing as Apple. But for Windows, I put a side note here that the EU might be to blame for this, because when Microsoft entered the AV market with Windows Defender runs in the kernel. It has to, because that's the best place to monitor processes and things like that. And the EU said, well, if Microsoft Defender gets to run in the kernel, so does everybody else. That's anti-competitive if you don't let them do that. So now everybody gets kernel level access. It's the giant Wild West. Maybe it's kick everybody out, including Microsoft themselves, out of the kernel, and maybe things like this might stop.
I said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. Processes inside the kernel, nasty. He's like users on the network. It's yucky. Keep them out of there. Simple as that. What was the...
it all goes back to that 2006, 2007 with the new operating system that was coming out then, the Microsoft operating system, Vista. So Vista was coming out.
Oh, man, you are like taking it way back.
See, but I'm not taking it back to... I guess back there with that McAfee, but I can't tell you, all the different changes, all the different things. But Microsoft was offering or recommending even then, again, kernel level, that WFP, that Windows filtering platform. And that was going to be, their early on way of giving software access where it could run things without having kernel level mode. But Defender had kernel level access. Therefore, that was also driving some of these things that were coming out of the EU as well, gives you unfair advantage. So, yes, but that all went back to Vista, because I remember during that time, like, what is this operating system? Are we going to start migrating? Is this going to be an enterprise level one, or what's that going to look like?
Oh, come on now. You don't get a choice. It's always going to be an enterprise. Like, it's the next version. You guys have to do it. But this would explain why I was terrified. I think it was around the Windows Vista days when I remember I came across something called GMER. Do you guys remember that?
No.
I even know what the acronym stood for, but it was hell-bent on finding processes that were running in the kernel. So you couldn't see it when you would open up Task Manager, but then you would use... It was similar to like Rootkit Revealer.
It's like a rootkit.
Yeah. And so you would do that, and I remember just like crapping my pants. It's like, oh my God, if this is on my computer, like, what am I going to find on other things? And sure enough, like, this is back in the day when I was like doing my own little side hustle, right, and helping people fix computers. And I remember that was like the one thing that boot into safe mode, do that, and it didn't matter what you had. I was cleaning this son of a bitch up so quick. It was great.
And speaking of rootkits, I remember like back when Sony CDs had the DRM in it, you'd pop the CD in your computer to play music. It would just install a rootkit that would basically not allow you to copy the CD. And it's like, what gives you a right to put this crapware on my computer?
So the kernel's still open. So that must be like GMER or like a rootkit revealer must be something that's kind of built into every EDR at this point, right?
I mean, it's got to be. That's the only way to find a rootkit.
Yeah.
That or something equivalent to that.
But what if there's logic built in to hide itself from the rootkit revealer, right?
It's the trace buster, buster.
Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah, it's always got to be a cat and mouse. One of our stories later, I'm positive we're not going to have time to go to it, but they're like using Windows sysinternals or using Windows' own processes against themselves to hide themselves or to kill processes, those living off the land techniques. They're getting pretty sophisticated. And that's exactly why we're in this mess, is because CrowdStrike pushed an update that looks for kernel level command and control signals, and that's when they ran into problems. Like it was to detect, I think it was Windows pipes was a command and control vector that they were updating their signatures for.
I'll tell you what, some people on X did an incredible job of explaining like what actually happened, like the null pointer and like what that really meant in space and the reason why it killed itself. And then, which was pretty amazing. I was like, all right. And then another guy came on top of him and was like, dude, your math is all wrong. You're saying it's at position 45. It's at 44. I'm like, you freaking nerds. My God. But but it did dumb it down. Yeah. Like it worked. Right. And then next thing you know, like it just hard left turn to all the conspiracy theories in the world. And they were great. I mean, which I think is the reason why George came out and was like, this is not a cybersecurity incident. And I was like, he must be dealing with all the, the tinfoil hat people. I choose to believe all the things. So
I think the funniest one was, I sent it to the two of you, my co-hosts in the group chat. I'll send it to Ben too. It was a 4chan post. And of course, everyone on 4chan is obviously trolling, but it said something like, right before this CrowdStrike outage, there was a big Azure outage. So they said, well, Azure had an outage. Azure was running the Biden AI because obviously Biden's already dead, and it's a weekend at Bernie situation. So the Biden AI went down, and then they had to have this CrowdStrike cover up because they had to see how much data got exfiltrated. And then lo and behold, after CrowdStrike restores their system, Biden gives a state of the state address or whatever. So there's that angle of it, which obviously is satire, hopefully, and people don't actually believe that.
I believe it. I just told you I believe everything. Come on, man.
So, well, and that's the other thing that's been thrown out there as well. We can walk down this. Why was this even called a cyber incident? Why was this not just an IT issue? Is it only because it was an AV software, that it was a security software? If this was, say, or any other type of application that was not security related, would it have just been called an IT outage or an IT incident or things like that? This was a normal change, which is also one more reason it was pushed out to everybody instead of it being staggered, things like that. Why do we still have these saying, was this a security incident? Operations in most organizations owns updates. They own patching. They own that process, not security. So everything here looks to me to be an operational issue. So why is there even a conversation of if this is a cyber incident or an IT?
I'd agree with you. This is an IT incident, and that's why a lot of I think a lot of companies, even CrowdStrike, they did not post a security bulletin. They just posted, "This is what's going on. We had an outage. Sorry."
Yep. Was anyone here actually impacted at all by this?
I was getting ready to go to the pool, so no. I was not doing any Windows-based work that had the CrowdStrike agent on it.
So nothing.
Or do you mean downstream? Do you mean downstream effects? I think Glenn's flight got delayed.
Yeah.
But he was flying Southwest, and apparently they were running Windows 3.1, so they were
No, that's a lie. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, that's been debunked. Yeah. They're not a CrowdStrike shop. That's the only thing that saved them, is they're not a CrowdStrike shop. Maybe they're
or none of their critical systems runs on Windows.
Yeah,
we'll never know. They're doing good things. So, how are you impacted, Ben?
No, I flew back on Thursday, so I flew back the day before. So I was very fortunate that even though I'm on a plane most weeks of the year, I was fortunate that I flew back the day before everything started being impacted. So I was very fortunate there.
I took a picture of a couple of the screens at the airport where they were blue screens and recovery mode, so it was fun.
Yeah, I came back a few days after you, and I sent it to you guys, a picture of me sitting in front of an airport sign that was still in the recovery boot mode. Like,
That's
One thing I noticed is I had upgraded a flight, and it's insane. Like, so if you have a seat that was like bottom of the barrel, but it was moved up just a little bit, and then you upgrade from there, they credit you back the $26, and then you just pay like the fare difference. It's kind of weird. But normally that when I make that change, it comes in within seconds of doing the upgrade. This one came in this morning. That was last week. So it was a back end, but it didn't impact me negatively at all.
Yeah. I was telling my wife, I said, should I go to the kiosk and just like fix it for them, or leave it alone?
If you were nice, you would have fixed it. Again, it needs physical presence.
Yeah.
Bust out the laptop, connect to it, and get at it.
I was driving through San Diego in like these bus shelters in San Diego. There's no paper ads anymore. Everything's digital now. It's just these digital billboards inside these bus shelters. We're all just showing the recovery screen. Like they're just down until somebody physically goes to that bus shelter and reboots it.
So go ahead and fix it, and then send them an invoice for your, whatever your hourly rate is, and say, "Hey, here I am. You're welcome."
I just feel terrible for any frontline worker that is, at minimum wage or slightly above, because they just got irate people just screaming at them, and they have literally nothing they can do about it.
Yeah, like even the Starbucks app, the Coffee Bean app, you couldn't order ahead. Like just everything was down. You had to physically go into the store, and hopefully when you're in the store, the actual register or kiosk would work, and you could actually buy a coffee. I mean, they're crediting this to be the worst IT outage in history, 8.5 million endpoints. And to some extent, I think that's true. I think we probably haven't had this many canceled flights since 9/11. But one of the things that stood out to me was for state and local governments, they were hit. And, they're known not to have really sophisticated IT staff. And there are exceptions, of course. But even like 911 call centers went down. And I remember the very worst cyber attacks against Baltimore, Atlanta, they always said 911's not affected. This one actually affected the 911 call centers.
So what do you think? You think people are going to go 50-50, like go Sentinel-1 and CrowdStrike 50-50, or do they still go all in? Yeah, just for
double down.
Twice as much attack surface, twice as much exposure. Or you go the other way and say, this is exactly why you don't run security, because it can crash your machine.
Yeah. Or, like I said, just 50-50 in environment, right? Instead of all eggs in one basket on all your devices, you go 50-50.
That's an operation. I want to get Ben's take on that. What would it take as a CISO to run 50% CrowdStrike, 50% Sentinel-1? Like, that just seems like an
Defender or whatever, right? So, yeah.
No, well, that's the thing. On what?
If you end with
on your workstations, or do you run a different one on your servers versus your workstations? And almost every organization I've been in, we run a different AV on the servers versus the workstations. So we always want to have some,
already doing
some differentiation. So, and that's not all that uncommon in the field to have that. But I don't know that you're going to sit there and say, half of your end-use devices are going to be on a different AV client, other than if there's an operational, for some reason you still have antiquated software. So we're still running Windows 2003 server. Well, you can't run, say, CrowdStrike on that. So you're going to have to get something that will run on that. So maybe you get some version of ESET that'll still license that for you, and you run that on those devices. But I don't think you're going to get anywhere near a 50-50 on the same type of workstations, because from a operational, from total cost of ownership, from all of those things, it's going to be very high cost operating like that. Now you have to have your people trained. Your support desk are going to have to be trained on that. And is it, at the end of the day, truly lowering, managing, and mitigating any risk? And can you sell that to anybody else in the business of this has to happen because this once in 100-year type of thing, or once every 15 years type of thing, will minimize? Well, is half the company being down versus so you just got to, again, how do you manage your risk? How do you minimize it? And what's that going to look like?
I have
these these so-called black swan events. They seem to be happening like once every 15 days now. It's just like every other week there's something new that's like unprecedented or once in a generation. Like Azure went down.
I don't think we were as connected as we are now than we were 15, 20, 30 years ago, right? I mean,
Agreed.
back then we're talking, 386, 486 Pentium processing, right? So
Pentium. Hit the turbo button, Glenn.
yeah.
Yeah, just like you said, 15 years ago we had print banners, billboards inside bus shelters. Now everything's digital. Same with menus. We had physically printed menus. Now everything's digital. Like you can't order from KFC because the screen showing the menu blue screened.
All right. Today I learned Crystal eats KFC. You think you know better.
He still eats Taco Bell too, like crazy.
Come on, man. That Diablo sauce. How do you think I never caught COVID, Brian?
Oh,
I have a conspiracy theory. I think that Chipotle was hit really, really hard by this. I think they may have been the actual target for whatever reason. Because when I went there yesterday to get my burrito bowl, I was like, hey, dude, see this guy all the time. He's kind of a jerk. I was like, hey, double steak, hook it up. And he, gives me the scoop number one. Scoop number two, he puts it on, but he leaves one piece of steak on the spoon and puts it back.
Oh, God.
He literally robbery,
like,
Brian.
It was. I was like, I just looked at it. I was like, dude, what is that? I was like, this is one piece. I was like, that warrants like a whole other scoop.
The customer is always right.
I heard though at Chipotle, if you give them like the nod,
The side look.
Side look, is that true, Brian?
No, this guy doesn't work. He just doesn't like me. I think I may have wore something that didn't align with his beliefs. I see him,
Really,
and he's
Brian
like
wearing
jerk.
something offensive.
Yeah,
No way.
yeah, like an American flag, right? And the guy was just weird.
Right.
Brian said "holy guacamole" and it insulted him. So
I did use my free birthday guacamole though, and I enjoyed it. So in your face,
Yeah, happy birthday, Brian. Didn't give you your birthday shout out at the top of the show.
Sweet 16.
yeah, to be dumb again.
The other thing the last note I have here was the number of ambulance chasers. I saw one, like I said, I was on vacation. I was trying to stay disconnected, but I saw one screenshot floating around of I don't know, he was head of sales or something for cyber reason. And he said, hey, are you tired of your EDR crashing yourself? Call 1-8, and then he gave the toll-free number, but the toll-free number ended with NOCRWD, no crowd. Like apparently they had enough time to register this vanity phone number and set up this hotline for people that want to switch off CrowdStrike onto cyber reason.
Wasn't he the same guy that is just like, I was sitting at dinner and my mom asked me, could this ever happen in my company? I'm like, absolutely not, it can't. Do you know what I'm talking about? Did you see that one?
I didn't see that. Like I said, I tried to stay disconnected, but this one was making its rounds.
Insane in the membrane.
And that's the thing is, why are you doing things like this? And you work in software sales, and we live in a very connected world. So you start doing things like this, you're going to have a reputation, and that's going to stick with you for a long, long time. So no, it's just not being a good person.
Brian has a reputation, just definitely at Chipotle. So
sorry, they withhold that one piece of steak for you.
That's right.
It's so weird, man.
And
then I was like,
aggressive way at getting back at you. That'll show him.
And then I asked for the queso, and he's like, he literally put it only on one side of the bowl, and I had to like stir it.
A little passive aggressive. I mean,
how long has this been going on? Is this guy still working there? What the heck?
I believe he's a manager. And what kind of pisses me off is that I actually address him by his name because I know who he is. And anytime I go there, I always and I typically pay cash when I go to Chipotle. I always leave like let's say, my thing is like $13, right? I got 7 and change or 6 and change. And then I always give them the whole thing. I'm just like, put it right there in the tip for all you guys. Like I'm known as a big tipper for them. Cause
all around good guy.
Well, there's a lot of cool people there. Him, not one of them though, for sure. For some reason, he's just, I'll kill him with kindness.
Big tipper like that. Like they should know you. They should greet you when you come in. They should know your orders. Like the usual Mr. Deach. Dude,
at Jersey Mike's, they do a sandwich in a bowl, and same exact thing. Like I walk in, hey Brian, how's it going? And I've only been there 3 times, but I always throw money in the tip jar just to be nice.
Yeah,
But they hook it up over there, man, that's a good sandwich bowl. Tell you what.
Make me want to go to Chipotle later on.
All I'm saying is we do know people at Chipotle. We know their CISO. If it continues, we can make some calls for you, Brian, and we can see what we can do for you.
You know what? We'll handle it externally. I'm going to win them over one way or the other.
Maybe you can wear a rainbow shirt next time you go in there and win them over that way.
Hey, you know what though? Chipotle takes care of their people. I don't know if you guys have seen it. At least in Arizona, this would be kind of a lot of money. But it's just there's a career path, guaranteed 3 years to get you to $100K. That's not a bad deal for some younger people that are out there.
Stick with it in an industry that traditionally has very high turnover, and very high turnover costs a lot of money.
In-N-Out was advertising if you become a manager of the store, it's $175K.
I'm sorry, what?
$175K to manage.
We're in the wrong business.
Yeah.
And free In-N-Out. What's not to love?
And they didn't even know what's on the hidden menu too. Ah.
All right, last piece I want to mention on this, since we are running up on time here, I think the even insult to injury, because Microsoft made a bootable USB. You just plug this thing in, boots into safe mode, deletes the file, set it and forget it. The problem is BitLocker. You have to manually enter the BitLocker key for every BitLocker locked machine, which is basically every enterprise machine should be BitLocker encrypted. And since safe mode is not a bypass to BitLocker, you have to boot into safe mode. You have to boot in the key, decrypt the hard drive, and only then could you delete the problematic file. So you have these people punching in physical keyboards the 48-bit BitLocker key for every single machine, and hopefully you saved it somewhere instead of Vault, and you had to just manually type this thing in.
Try to figure out what's an O, what's a 0. Try to figure out the different things.
I's, the L's,
yes.
the ones. Gosh.
If you're an IT person working 24 hours straight, and your eyes start to cross, that was not a. They were not happy about this for sure.
You're not paying me enough to do this. Oh my god.
I'm gonna
go work at Chipotle.
One company got clever. They converted the BitLocker keys into barcodes, and they started using a barcode scanner to enter all the keys in. That's necessity being the mother of all innovation.
But how would that even work?
Yeah.
Because most of this is CLI at that point. So how's that scanner working? How's it integrated? The OS isn't even booted to that level that it could take that, right?
I'll send you the screenshot. I think in safe mode, it can still load a USB keyboard driver. I guess a barcode scanner is the equivalent of a keyboard, and you just scan the code, and then that barcode is the equivalent of the BitLocker key.
Oh, 30,000.
It's pretty clever.
But it's all different, barcodes. It's not the same one. It's not like you're buying produce, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you type in the host name of the machine, look it up in your key vault, convert it to a barcode, then scan it. It's faster than manually typing in 48 bits on every single machine.
Again, pain.
We continue to get great comments about our dad joke of the week.
Dad joke of the week.
This week, our guest Ben is up.
You mean I had to actually come up with the dad joke of the week?
Yes, Bennifer, get it together.
Guest.
Oh, come on, man. You could have at least given me a heads up. All right. Did you hear about the cleaners who went to space?
No.
Neither did I. They ended up scrubbing the mission.
Wah, wah, wah.
The best dad joke yet.
Yes.
Yeah, you put me on the spot. That's the best I could come up with.
All right. To wrap things up, use updated iPhones if you value your privacy, and be very wary of security updates. That's all I have for this week. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find us all on LinkedIn. Links will be in the description. Follow us on Instagram at PEBCAK Podcast. Thank you to all our listeners and subscribers who rated us 5 stars in the iTunes Store and Spotify and left us a review. We appreciate you all spreading the word to help grow the show. The best way to find us is search for the PEBCAK Podcast on your favorite podcast listening app. My co-hosts Brian Deitch and Glenn Medina, and our guest Ben Coral, I'm Chris Lee. Thanks for listening. We'll see you all next weekend. As always, have a nice day.
Bye, Felicia.
The Walkers, Coral.
Have a nice day.